Okay, so this is a nature center in Lethbridge, Alberta, and this is Laura Pearsall, who's actually found out here, but she moved out west and has been living in a lot of small places. And the way that she works as a culture maker and an educator, she's a naturalist, and she teaches children and youth about nature and have respect for animals and stuff like that. So culture making in small towns isn't just zines and filmmaking and sculpture and whatnot, or it's not just art, it's also teaching a culture of our engagement with our surroundings. So here she taught me to hang out with this awesome snake. Don't worry, it's not a pet snake, it was a rescue snake. The snake was injured and they rescued it. No pet trade pets, rescue animal right here. Okay, Sophie the gopher snake. And here's some awesome costumes Laura and her colleagues made to put on children's heads and teach them all about being in love with the little critters. This is the Star Trek, this is the Enterprise right here. Outside of Calgary, about an hour and a half drive outside of Calgary into the Badlands, another note on that after, there's this interesting little town called Vulcan. It's a coincidence, it doesn't even have the same spelling as Spock's planet. Total coincidence, but there were some female mathematicians and geographers there in the 70s who were totally in love with Star Trek. And they said, hey, our town has the same name, kind of, as Spock's planet. Let's make something of this, because we love Star Trek. So this is a really interesting kind of a trace of this female intellectual culture at a time, this generation of women, it wasn't as common for women to go to university, and they all fell in love with Star Trek. And they had the idea to, in their town of 1200, establish this space center, visitor center. So welcome to Vulcan. Live long and prosper. Internet service available. Because when you're in the wilderness, you need your internet, right? So this is a view of their visitor center. Town of 1200 in the Badlands. Spaceship. What? Okay. This is their other spaceship. They have more than one spaceship. And what I thought was pretty cool about this town is it's in what some of us might perceive as the Bible Belt. And there were lots of religious signs like churches, those signs you drive through a town and it says, repent now, you're screwed, come to church. And then we pull into the parking lot here and the first thing we saw was this license plate that said believe. And of course it's not Christianity, she's talking about believe in the people from other planets. And this mother was taking her young kids here to learn about space and the possibility of other life, which I thought was just a beautiful way to teach your children belief. Okay, so here we go. This is a bunch of corn. This is also in the Badlands. This place is called Taber, Alberta. If you take the highway from Lethbridge and you're aiming for Saskatchewan, you'll pass a lot of giant objects. Out west, they love giant things, big spaces. This is the biggest corn in the world, or so they claim. It's actually not real corn. It's made of concrete and metal. And just for perspective, this man is 6'4". How big is the corn if this man is 6'4", right? So just perceive, right, the spectacle of the corn. But inside there's a visitor center with an ode to this homemade museum made by people in the town of Taber. And they have this amazing diorama of the Old Man River. So the river that goes through Lethbridge and through this area, through a lot of the Badlands, is actually called Old Man River. You might remember from the history of African American struggles in Hollywood, a certain Paul Robeson sung that song, Old Man River, in this really heartbreaking way. But there's also that river in Alberta by that name. And it goes near here, through a canal, I think the St. Mary Canal. And I asked the lady, okay, so, it looks nice around here. Are we in what you call the Badlands? And the pamphlet totally says Badlands, and the highway signs say Badlands. She said, oh, I wouldn't call it that. It's actually quite nice, So this kind of denial of location is pretty interesting. She wouldn't accept that her area was called the Badlands. Here's more traces of colonial culture and the destruction that happened and is happening, still ongoing. This is at Medicine Hat. It's a huge monument to Plains Aboriginal cultures with different tribes represented by these paintings here. And again, for perspective, 6'4", a good giant thing right here. And you can see it as you're driving along the Trans-Canada Highway. You can see it from super far away, and it looks tiny from far away, and then you get close, and it's huge. It's just absolutely huge, and it's supposed to be a teepee. And, it's a sad, lonely monument to an ongoing genocide in this country. Well, that's not what it's supposed to be a monument to. It's supposed to be like, wonderful, celebrate, but the truth be told, you know, no denying it. So this is the Santianen. This is a really, really cool story that goes with this little ship here. There was this Finnish immigrant named Tom who came to the States, and then he heard he might make a bit more money in Canada. And in Canada, things were not so good for him either. This is around 1910. He walked from Minnesota into Saskatchewan, and he decided he was going to set up his farm. He was really hardworking laborer. But when things didn't work out and his family died and he got a little bit depressed, he looked at the Saskatchewan River and thought, you know, I hear from Jesus that there's a huge flood coming. So what I'm going to do is build a boat, and my boat is going to float up the Saskatchewan River, out the Hudson's Bay, back to Finland. So this was his plan. He built this himself. He didn't have some kind of engineering degree or something. He was a self-taught tradesperson. Built this gigantic boat. This name actually has a rough translation to cockroach, like little insect. It's actually not a flattering name. It's from Finnish. And of course he died before the flood that still hasn't happened yet. I mean, funny, interesting story here. This is the museum where somebody rescued. His ship was just rotting out in a field somewhere near North Battleford, and some people from this near Moose Jaw decided, well, this guy is a local legend, and you know, his dream was really ridiculous, but let's build this kind of homemade museum to dreams of the impossible and people sort of being faithful to what they believe in. So whether or not you agree with Tom's vision, it's an amazing thing that he was so dedicated and faithful to what he thought was true and real, that he built his whole reality around it. So this is a museum piece right here, a nice old man with an old cat hanging out. That's where it is, just south of Moose Jaw. This is Tom's grave. So Tom Sukanen, which I'm probably not saying correctly. Finns would probably laugh at our pronunciation. So here we go. This is Tom's map. This is how he planned to ride out the flood and go back to Finland. And anyone who's been out west before knows how flat and dry it is. I mean, there's always droughts and stuff, but here he was thinking, okay, well, when the biblical flood comes, the water will raise enough here, I can take my ship up and out and back to Finland. So what a dream. It's just an amazing thing to contemplate. And Tom made everything in this room. All of those objects he made himself with his own hands. So in the context of deindustrialization and migration, we also have this period of alienation from our labor, so it can be hard to imagine making everything in your home yourself, let alone the ship that you plan to sail home in, all the objects in the room. I mean, who in our generation would have the experience of building all that? And it's something to contemplate. Okay, so this is just a shot of running along this theme of transition and change. So this is downtown Moose Jaw, which at one time would have been, I'm sure, a lot of hustle bustle, and now waterbed world. There's no waterbeds left in there. Sunset on Main Street. Here's another trace of, you know, resistance and trying to pay tribute to that. Sorry, I'll take another moment with that. That's Louis Riel, if you didn't recognize him, just in case. I know Guelph is a very political town, so you probably knew right away who that was. This is just the stunning coincidence of living in a country where there's one main highway that goes, you want to go east, you go that way, you want to go west, you go that way. You're not driving in circles and getting lost like you are in the United States of America. You're driving in one direction for most of this country if you're going on a long trip. So of course, in Regina, pull into a coffee shop in search of internet. That is like that thing that everyone's always desperate for when you're on a big trip. We looked to the cafe that might have internet. We ran into someone we actually knew, and he wasn't surprised at all because, of course, yeah, hey, what are you guys doing in Regina? Hey, I know you live like 2,000 kilometers away. And it's kind of a monument to how interconnected culture makers are in this country. That's Eric Hill. He's a filmmaker. I don't know him. But when we walked in as well, there was somebody from Little Mosque on the Prairie having a coffee. And clearly, it was the guy who's married to that actress. I've only seen one episode, but it's this sort of classy dad guy. He was getting a latte, and ladies were coming up to him. Hey, you're in a TV show, right? He's like, yeah. Totally his pickup joint. So if you want to land a TV actor, a comedian, CBC star, this is the coffee shop. It's Atlantic Cafe in Regina.